Welcome into a brand new hour of CBS Sports HQ. Jeremy St. Louis alongside Jacqueline D'Agostino. I hope you're enjoying your President's Day. Do you say Happy President's Day? I mean, I'm not from, so I want to make sure I got it right.
Honestly, I don't know. Happy. It sounds good to me, Jeremy.
Hope you're enjoying your President's Day. We'll stick with that. How about that? Boy, what a President's Day is going to be. We have so many great games on the sporting calendar. We're a week, of course, removed from Super Bowl 58, which is come and gone. And I mean, you think football's over, but I mean, is it really ever over?
It's really not, Jeremy, because we're already looking ahead to the draft. We're talking prospects, mock drafts, of course, and then free agency and that whole period, because the franchise tag window, it's already almost here. That window opens tomorrow, and then the negotiating window for free agents opens on March 11th. So, of course, up until March, we're going to be talking about the top free agents that could be there out on the market right now. Plenty of big names that we could see, and these are the ones to look out for, according to our Tyler Sullivan. There's an article right now on CBSSports.com. The top one there, Kansas City's arguably best defensive player, Chris Jones, Josh Allen, huge playmaker for the Jags, T. Higgins, and then, of course, number 9 on that list, Antoine Winfield Jr. Not the only Buck to hit free agency. You see Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, and today is a big day for Tampa Bay because there is a huge financial benefit for the Bucs. If they can get deals done with these guys today, they can save around $11 million against the 2024 cap. But there is a report out there that a deal with Mike Evans is very, very far away, and he is inching closer towards free agency. So let's bring in Brinson and Bryant McFadden to discuss. We're going to start with the Bucs. Just stated there, they're going to save a lot of money, $11 million to be exact, against the cap if they can get deals done today with some of those big names. But Brinson, I'll start with you. A report out there that a deal is not going to get done today for Mike Evans.
Yeah, and first of all, happy President's Day. That's what you say. I have no clue. But everybody's enjoying their day off. I know my 10-year-old is running around the house like a maniac because he didn't have school today. Just like Mike Evans might be running around the country like a maniac when he gets to free agency, because I think there's a decent chance, Jacqueline, that we could see, like, there's 2 sneaky landing spots for Mike Evans. And like, he is one of the probably the most low-key community guys with the work that he does with the community in Tampa Bay. He loves the area. The area loves him. Would not be surprised at all if he decided to stay there. Been there his entire career, of course. And, you know, Baker Mayfield coming to town after having Tom Brady. You feel like there's some stability at quarterback. But this is a Houston guy in Mike Evans. And the Texans with C.J. Stroud and, you know, and plenty of talent on that roster. Maybe the need for an alpha wide receiver. That would be an interesting fit. I also think the Kansas City Chiefs, you know, we're talking about them with other various players of their own, like Chris Jones. But, man, they have a receiver rights. They could use an alpha receiver as well. And they've done this before. They've gone out and splurged in free agency to try and get wide receivers. It's not something Andy Reid is shy about doing.
I mean, the greatest offensive player in Buccaneers franchise history is Mike Evans. A future Hall of Famer, in my opinion. He's a walking wide receiver that will get you at least 1,000 yards receiving, regardless who the quarterback is. He's just been so consistent. And it's hard to say, it's hard to think that his time in Tampa potentially might be done, but that's the reality of the situation. They had ample amount of time to get a deal done before the start of 2023. He basically gave the franchise a deadline to meet. They did not meet that deadline. He played this season outstanding, kept his mouth closed, wasn't a distraction, and was just the ultimate professional on the football field. And now when you factor in everything that they have going on when it comes to contract negotiations with other players, Baker Mayfield is going to be the first domino to fall. And then everything else will follow Baker Mayfield. But until they sign Baker Mayfield, it's safe to say Mike Evans will be waiting. And whenever free agency hits, now they have to battle with other organizations, like Will just mentioned, that could definitely use a wide receiver like Mike Evans.
Yeah, thinking of Mike Evans with Patrick Mahomes or C.J. Stroud is really fun, guys. So we'll have to see what happens. B-Mac, let's talk about your Steelers, because there's a report out there that they're going to be deciding between Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph for QB1. B-Mac, what are your thoughts on that for the Steelers if they're going that route versus trying to get a veteran QB in free agency?
Well, Jacqueline, Will, I'm not jumping the gun like most Steelers fans are doing right now hearing this news, because they don't want that scenario. They're hoping for a veteran presence at the quarterback position. And I think when you look at where we are in the NFL calendar year, you still have time to kind of assess what's going on outside. You talked about free agency when it would start, March the 11th. So we're weeks away from that. So hearing this news right now clearly is not the best news you would want to hear, because you feel like when you look at the quarterback room for the Pittsburgh Steelers compared to the other quarterback rooms in the division specifically, they're kind of at the bottom of the pecking order when you factor in a healthy Joe Burrow, a healthy Lamar Jackson, a healthy Deshaun Watson. And one thing we know about the NFL, it's a quarterback league. If you have aspirations of competing for a Super Bowl, you need to have that guy at the quarterback position. And unfortunately for Pittsburgh right now, as we see it, Kenny Pickett has been up and down. We saw a nice resurgence of production when Mason Rudolph jumped into the lineup in 2023, but is that sustainable for a full year? So right now, hearing this news, I'm not jumping the gun and throwing over tables and breaking TVs like a lot of Steelers fans are doing, because maybe this will be a different sentiment once free agency starts in a few weeks. Specifically speaking, March the 11th, and now seeing exactly who is available and what's the cost, what the cost would be in trying to get them to become to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph, man, this is the worst choice in November 2024. I think that when you look at this, I mean, this is a rock and a hard place for the Steelers. I'll tell you what, give me a third-party candidate. Give me Justin Fields. Go out and trade for Justin Fields, guys. If you were already in a place with Kenny Pickett, a former first-round pick, where you've got to go and decide between him and Mason Rudolph. Look, I love Chris Trapasso, but it's been a while for Mason Rudolph, man. This guy, he's like hanging around the Steelers organization, and like he's pushing the first-round pick in Pickett. This is just a problem. This is a team that has too much talent to waste, especially in a really difficult division. I think you got to go out and make a move to get somebody else. Russell Wilson, I know we're going to talk about, is on the market. I mean, look, Russ is old and looks washed with two different teams, but at least it gives you a little bit of upside. And then I think with the field stuff, the Bears are clearly thinking about moving on. If they want to go get Caleb Williams, they would entertain him for draft picks. That, to me, makes a lot more sense, especially in an Arthur Smith offense where we've seen him utilize quarterbacks with their legs.
Brinson, B-Mac, my younger brother, he is a huge Steelers fan. So when all of this was going down and you mentioned Russ Wilson, I asked him, I was like, hey, Michael, how would you like Russ Wilson with the Steelers? And he was like, hey, I'll take him. Whether he's washed up or whatever verbiage Brinson just used there, it doesn't look like he's going to be a Steeler, but he is putting his house up for sale there in Denver. Maybe moving day for him in Sierra that we're seeing on the rise. But Brinson, where do you think we could see Russ end up?
I mean, I think Pittsburgh can make a lot of sense. I mean, the problem is, so Russ, look, when quarterbacks put their, it's just one of these things. It's sort of, it's like, it's like we like following athletes on Instagram. Like delete their Instagram. When you put your mansion on the market, you're done. Like, it's over. And it's very clear that when the Broncos benched Russell Wilson at the end of last year, that they were ready to move on, that Sean Payton was going to pin the failures of the team on Russell Wilson. And we knew that all along. If he struggled, if the Broncos weren't good, if the offense didn't excel, Russell Wilson was going to get the blame. And it's going to be incredible to watch Russell Wilson versus Sean Payton in a passive-aggressive source-off all offseason, like casting the blame once they actually do move on. I think Pittsburgh can make sense, and frankly, otherwise, it'd be a situation where Russell has to accept a backup role. Fortunately, he'll be getting paid pretty well for it.
Well, when you look at teams that potentially could use a veteran presence at the quarterback position, you talked about Pittsburgh. I agree with you, Will. What about the Atlanta Falcons, right? They definitely need to find an answer at the quarterback position, potentially a short-term answer. Russell could be that guy. And what about Minnesota? If Minnesota decides to move on from Captain Kirk Cousins, they could potentially be in the running for a veteran presence as well. And then right there in his division, the AFC West, I understand Aiden O'Connell took over at the starting quarterback position for the Las Vegas Raiders when Jimmy Garoppolo was benched, but who knows what their future holds at the quarterback position, especially knowing that they have a young guy in Aiden O'Connell. So I understand, yes, Russell Wilson, one thing we know for sure, his time as Denver is done. It's all about what's next for Russell moving forward in his career. And I do believe he's a starting quarterback in the National Football League. I believe he needs to go into a great situation where he has a nice, sound relationship, respectful relationship between the play caller, head coach, and what he brings to the table as a leader and as a quarterback. And he still can give you some productive numbers.
All right, guys, that list that we showed at the top of this segment with the likely free agency candidates out there, Kansas City's best defensive player, Chris Jones, was #1 on that list, an unlikely tag candidate because of that high cap number. So interesting to see what's going to happen with him when free agency comes. And Brinson, Micah Parsons making some words saying, hey, I would love to have Chris Jones on this Dallas defense with me.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't love to have Chris Jones? He's probably the Chiefs' third best player, maybe second best player, depending on how you feel about Travis Kelce at this stage of his career. Obviously, Mahomes first. I mean, Chris Jones is the thing that is the guy that makes that defense go. And you see what he does in key moments in the playoffs, like down the stretch. His numbers and his production, his pressure rate are just outrageous. I don't see. And look, he got up there during the parade. And I think his agent was tweeting, cut him off, because he was yelling, I'll be back. I think they'll work something out. You know, when you're Chris Jones and you've made all this money and you love your teammates, you're in a great situation, and you are going to be there with a chance to win a Super Bowl every single year, it's difficult to leave as long as you're getting paid pretty well. And I think you're going to see that. We've seen that before, right? With the Patriots. Saw it when Tom Brady went to the Buccaneers a little bit. You saw it with the Broncos with Peyton Manning. Guys are just willing to stick around because they want to play for a team that's going to have a shot at the Lombardi every single season.
That's the one luxury Kansas City they have at their disposal, right? Trying to three-peat, something we've never seen done before in this Super Bowl era. So that could be a pitch for Chris Jones, but Chris Jones is sitting in the catbird seat. Man, listen, because of his cap number in 2023, the likelihood of him being franchised is not likely. The normal tag, if he was franchised, would be $19 million. But because of his cap number in 2023, if he's tagged, he's seeing north of $30 million. So if you're Kansas City, you cannot afford to do that when you have other players you need to secure when it comes to their contract. So hopefully they get a deal done, because he will be the most coveted free agent available if he is on the market. He is that type of player. Chris Jones is basically the equivalent to Aaron Donald if he was a free agent. That's the skill set. That's the type of player he is. A disruptor on the line, in the line of scrimmage. He's a do-it-all player, 3-down tight lineman. He's a disruptor when it comes to run support as well, not to mention putting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. So it's super imperative for Kansas City to get a deal done with Chris Jones, because if you do not, instantly you lose a impactful player to your defense, and you improve an opposing team that's chasing what you already have when it comes to the other 31 teams available that could definitely use a guy like Chris Jones.
And right now on CBSSports.com, we have his projected market value, 3 years, $84.5 million. Let's talk more about the franchise tag window. Opening tomorrow, last season, half of the players that were tagged, so 3 out of the 6, were running backs. B-Mac, do you think we see that same running back franchise tag narrative again this season?
Well, for Saquon Barkley's sake, I hope not, because I know he does not want to be tagged again. I don't know if the Giants will decide to tag him, but I think they need to find a way to get a deal done. And another team, you talked about Houston, you know, maybe trying to go get a guy like Mike Evans. What about Houston if Saquon Barkley is available, trying to go get a guy like Saquon Barkley to add him to what they already have offensively, led by C.J. Stroud? That would be an outstanding offense when you factor in the skill set that Saquon Barkley has. But when you look at, we talked about Tampa Bay earlier, right? I think Antoine Winfield Jr. is a target to be tagged. When you look at not knowing what's going to happen with Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, as we mentioned, Levante David, who had an unbelievable year. Remember, he's a free agent as well. Antoine Winfield Jr. might be a taggable guy when you factor in all the free agents that Tampa has, unfortunately, trying to get a deal done with those guys. So, you know, we have to wait and see. But clearly, you know, running backs is always a notable name. But outside of that, I think Antoine Winfield Jr., unfortunately, potentially will be tagged by the Buccaneers.
I think the wide receiver position is actually the most interesting when it comes to the tags. You got T. Higgins with the Bengals, of course. They've got this window with Joe Burrow. It becomes a lot more difficult to keep the window open when you have to pay Jamar Chase. You've already now paid Joe Burrow last offseason. And then you have to figure out what you want to do with T. Higgins, $20 million tag there. T. Higgins would fetch a ton of money on the open market and would have a lot of teams interested in him. Michael Pittman Jr., too. And then Mike Evans. I don't think that the Bucs will tag Mike Evans because of what we talked about earlier, but it is possible if they could hammer out a deal with Antoine Winfield Jr., hammer out a deal with Baker Mayfield, which should be easier. I mean, he played for cheap and won a bunch of games. Then you could go and maybe tag Evans and hope to get a deal done by the July deadline to work deals out with franchise tag players.
B-Mac, Brinson, we appreciate it, discussing the franchise tag window that opens tomorrow. Brinson, best of luck. Hope your kid's not running around crazy for the rest of the day since he's off of school. Again, the franchise tag window opens tomorrow. We're going to have it all broken down right here on CBS Sports HQ with Brady Quinn and Pete Prisco. And a reminder, you can hear Brinson on the Pick Six podcast. In the very latest episode, the guys are talking about mock drafts, diving into the mailbag. You can download and listen wherever you get your pods or scan that QR code on your screen.